Hi everybody, and hello to our camera viewers. I'm really glad you guys could come today because I think it's a good practice, right, to touch base with anyone that teaches such a big class like this. For a lot of the gen ed classes on campus, WOTA classes and those kinds of things, they do regular sort of checkups, if you will, with the staff. And so I think it's just a kind of a good practice we get into. So that's really the purpose of today, is just to kind of take the temperature of the class from where you guys sit, see if there's things that are working or not working, to talk about some of the future things coming up, and then maybe just do a little reviewing. So if you've got questions, if you've got comments, please, your input and your feedback is really, really appreciated. The reason we're filming today is just because I know there's people that are giving finals right now and they just can't be here, and we want to make sure that they kind of get all of our good input as well. Okay? So there is an agenda, kind of an informal one. But I thought there's just a couple things we can touch base on. And again, I appreciate the fact that some of you guys in here teach Com 110 literally every semester, and some of you teach it just very randomly once in a while. Some of you are only online, some of you are only face-to-face, so we'll definitely touch it based on all of those kinds of things. Is there anything anyone wants to start with? Any questions or concerns right off the bat? SA?
What's a widget?
A widget is,
I had no idea what that is.
I'll show you. The widget is all of these things that are on the side of our page. Okay, so in this case, there's 4 widgets. One says roll switch, one just says Anderson Library. This Com 110 assessment widget is one that we just add, is one that we have to manually add. Okay, now we're getting ahead a little bit, but
We can wait. You can cover it later. Don't worry about it.
well, I can cover it now and just say, I think we're going to put assessment on hold for fall because of Canvas, because I don't know what Canvas offers in terms of widgets or assessment or anything like that. So if you don't have a widget, don't worry about it yet. We may need to get one with Canvas, but we don't know.
Okay.
So that's what this is. All right, so let me go back to here. The first thing I wanted to do, and again, this is for some of you that perhaps don't teach Com 110 very regularly, but I just wanted to go and show you where the Com 110 potluck site is. It's way at the bottom. You probably have a category called ongoing. You may or may not have a bunch of stuff in there, but we've got one that's called ongoing instructors potluck. And if you go to the one, you look for the word potluck and click on that, that's where we have a lot of materials for Com 110. Okay, so we've got some information about uploading speeches, how to get that widget in their essay if one needed to. The instructions are right here. But probably more importantly, the content section has in it some of the important materials. So it's got our learning objectives, which are on the back of this sheet. We'll go over that in just a moment. It talks about some of the different assignments we have in here, some minutes from any meetings that we would have had. Some of these are pretty old by now. I'll put the minutes from today in there. And some of the different materials. So if you're teaching Com 110 for the first time, this would be hopefully helpful to you. If you go, for instance, to the persuasive speech materials, it's got some templates, it's got rubrics, it's got, in some cases, again, some exercises some people posted. But the reason we call this a potluck is because we do want you to feel free to upload things of your own. So if, for instance, you have a persuasive activity you do that you feel really helps, I don't know, talk about argumentation or something, please feel free to post that up there, knowing that people might use it and things like that. But we'd love for you to go ahead and do that. Okay. Any comments or questions about the potluck site? Okay. The other site I'll show you then too, that's kind of in that same area, going way down again. So there's the potluck site. The other thing we have is this one that says textbook supplements for 110 new on. It's kind of a crazy long name. But this is the site that is strictly from the textbook, okay? So here's our Com 110 textbook. If you go to content then, in this site, it's got stuff from the book. It's got the PowerPoint slides, it's got the sample speech videos, it's got other kinds of instructor resources. This is one that we don't really mess with. We don't add to it or anything like that. It's strictly textbook stuff. So it's all things that the publisher sent us, okay? Now if you go to the textbook, the instructor resources, it does have test questions, it does have activities, and some things there if you're interested in any of that stuff too. I think they've got like sample speeches there, so I've done things like I've taken a speech and cut it up and done things with it for my classes too. So some of that's kind of useful too. So that's what I wanted to show you about the handout, or the potluck site there. The other thing then, I'll grab the back side of the agenda. This sheet on the back side is a document of some things that I hope a lot of you have seen before, or at least thought about before. And this is stuff that, let me pull this up myself here. These are things that hopefully we're all doing in COM 110. None of this is hopefully too much of a surprise. Okay, so again, in COM 110, because it is a course that so many of us teach, and because it's a course that we're assessing, we feel it's pretty important that we do many things really consistently. Not everything. We don't have to be a cookie cutter of each other, but some of the big things that we do pretty consistently. And so we've got some of these requirements. Nothing has really changed at all. The 4 speeches, one is, we call it a floater speech, so you can do it anytime, anywhere. Some people have indicated that they like to do kind of an introductory, sort of a vague speech or something that gets people speaking really early in the semester. I think some people do an impromptu speech at the end of the semester as a final. Any of that is fine. We do want to do a speech of introduction, an informative speech, and a persuasive speech, so those are all the same. There has to be some testing in your course. I think everyone does that. And then lots of other things that you can do at your discretion. So for some people, that may include some self-reflection kind of work, maybe some worksheets or other kinds of things, you know, whatever you deem appropriate. Because again, we all have some different tried and true practices that we like to keep. I would definitely encourage you that if you have some other assignments that sort of fit into this other category, that you upload that to that potluck site, because I think a lot of teachers would love to see that. The potluck site, I feel like, is really particularly helpful when we have a new teacher that sort of swoops in at the last minute. You know, sometimes we have a COM 110 teacher that they just find out in August that they have to teach COM 110, or maybe they're a brand new hire and they're teaching it. And so having extra resources can be really helpful, I think, for those folks. The point breakdown, again, I think is kind of one that we've seen before, where we are trying to be really consistent in the point breakdown. And when we grade our speech towards the end of the day today, we'll see how this all comes together. There are points, though, that are, again, totally at your discretion. So, for instance, if you feel like 150 points for testing is kind of on the low side, you'd prefer it to be higher, by all means, you know, give more tests or quizzes if you'd like. But certainly this could cover other kinds of worksheets or activities or exercises. The other things, then, as we scroll down this piece of paper, is please make note of a couple things. So we are trying to be consistent with timing. In the past, when we've looked at speeches, and we've just randomly looked at speeches, we have some teachers that are having their persuasive speeches be 4 minutes long, and then we have other teachers that literally were letting their students speak for more than 12 or 13 minutes, which seems unwieldy, right? So we're trying to be really kind of consistent. Now, granted, students will go over time, of course, but we just need to make sure that they're being penalized in some way. In our classes, I kind of cut them off, only because I'm worried that we're not going to get all the speeches in. So not to give anyone a heart attack, but so watch the time, please. Source requirements, again, in past workshops, we've kind of come to an agreement that, and I spelled the word quantity wrong, I apologize. We would have 3 sources for the informative speech and 5 sources for the persuasive. Now, if you go above and beyond that, so for instance, in the COM 110 classes that we teach, we also say that in the informative speech, one of the sources has to be a scholarly source. And in the persuasive speech, 2 of the sources have to be scholarly. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. That's just something we do to kind of, again, keep them on their toes a little bit. So keep in mind, again, you can add to some of these requirements if you feel like these are not stringent enough or rigorous enough for your taste. That's fine. In terms of citing sources, at a minimum, we ask that you have noted the date and the source. Again, if you want to go beyond that and have them cite more than that, that's fine. Once again, this is an area where a couple of years ago we took a tally, some of you might remember, to see what do you require your students to do. And then once again, this was something we were all over the map with. Some people barely had people citing anything at all, and other people were, you know, author, date, title, source, you know, what library were you in when you found this, kind of a thing. So this is at a minimum. Now, again, the widget thing, this is as it relates to D2L, these instructions will change as Canvas changes our class. But if you are teaching a face-to-face class in D2L, we ask that you have your students upload their speeches to the widget, okay? And again, instructions for that are on the thing. I have gone into many in many offices and helped people get the widget in place and then showed them how to use it. Our students, for the most part, are really so tech savvy that they don't have too many problems with it, luckily. But that's in place there. The other thing, yes?
When they upload it through the widget,
Yes.
do we have to send it to you, or does it automatically get sent?
It automatically goes to sort of to the cloud where we can access it then. So that's the beauty of this. We don't have to do anything. We just tell them, go to the widget, and hopefully they do and they figure it out. Ann?
So I have a question about, like sometimes I want to upload them because I do some of the recording. Is there a way, or should I talk to someone about this, to do several at once? So like when I import videos to my computer from my camera, I can choose like 10 of them to bring in. And can I do that with this?
I don't
It
know.
seems to be one at a time type situation. Maybe that's something to talk to.
Yeah, I think it's designed, because I know students that, they have to have, some students do have trouble uploading because of something to do with the formatting of their particular phone with this thing, and it has to do with storage and all that stuff. So that's a question I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know, because I don't know that I've ever had a student try to do more than one at once.
Right.
So,
Okay.
so good question. The last thing that I'd like you to consider, if you don't do this already, is to use Turnitin. Do any of you use Turnitin for any of your other classes? Okay. So I use this in Com 110, and I find it to be very helpful because, again, we know students take this course in so many, everyone takes it, right? So there's a zillion informative outlines on Aaron Rodgers or on this campus, let's be honest, right? And so I feel like Turnitin is something that we can help us keep the students on their toes. It's not a perfect system. So we run into, I guess, problems, you could say, where there's going to be no outlines probably that are completely and truly original in the sense that they have a 0 in the Turnitin file. Because first of all, their sources are all unoriginal. They didn't write their sources, right? So the source work alone is probably going to put them at a 10. If they quote their source and have a quote with quotation marks properly cited, that is still going to cause that originality number to increase, right? We run into things where we provide them a template, of course, right? A lot of students will type their work into the template, but keep the template there. So it'll have words like introduction, credibility. So all of that template is unoriginal. So that causes the number to go up. So it's not uncommon to see a perfectly good speech that is truly an original speech that the student created that's at a 30%, right? Which seems on the surface kind of high. So it is something to sift through a little bit. I've also run into it where I have a pretty high number, like a 60% number, meaning that it's 60% unoriginal, and yet the more I dig as far as I can and it won't let me find anything. So it'll say this links back to a document from Northwestern University. And so you click and you're trying to dig and it'll just say, you know, you'd have to contact the instructor or something. So you try to send an email, and I've never gotten a response when I've done that. So it's not a perfect system, but I feel like at least for us on campus, it helps to let students know, look, we're looking at it. If you're trying to do your roommate's outline from last semester, we're probably going to be able to track that down and find it. So.
That happened to me this semester.
Did it?
Roommates from last semester who was in my class. Yes, it was cool.
No, you use Turnitin, so.
I do use Turnitin, and that's
So
how I knew, but
good.
the speech sounded familiar.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, if it's from our university, it will tell you the student's name.
Yes.
It'll tell you what semester.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
And so I've gone so far, so sometimes I've had students who they'll upload something to the wrong Dropbox. So whoops, they upload their informative outline to their history Dropbox, and then they say, oh, how dumb of me. So then they upload it to the correct Dropbox. Well, guess what? It's already in the history Dropbox. So ding, 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 100% unoriginal. Well, there's a logical explanation for that. So thankfully, it does. If it's on our campus, it's much easier. So again, if you're not familiar with Turnitin, that's something I'd be happy to kind of show you a little bit. It kind of comes up with highlighted areas that are taken from somewhere. And so then you can do with it what you want. You don't have to do anything. Frankly, you could just use it as a little bit of a threat to your students, if nothing else. Rhea?
I assume the answer is yes, or the answer might be just you don't know yet, but I'm assuming, is there Turnitin integration already in Canvas?
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent. I was just going to turn to Jody. Good. Excellent. So I think, yeah, Turnitin seems very widely used across the country, maybe even across the world. So thank goodness.
And we are creating a template to start classes for Canvas, so that will automatically be checked, the Turnitin.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so speaking of Canvas, so yes, now I have to confess, when I wrote up this workshop, this was before Kathy's department meeting last Thursday, and yes, Com 110, they really, really want all of Com 110 to be on Canvas for fall. I think the way I've come to understand it, Jody, you can clarify, is freshmen will not be taught D2L. They will only be taught Canvas. So, and now here's the other surprising thing. So when we were taking a look at this and what this would mean for us, so I've got the 15 sections of Com 110 for fall. I went into those 15 sections to see how many freshmen do I really have, right? Because all along we always say this course is more like a sophomore course, right? The classes are mostly freshmen. Out of 30 students in a class, I have like 24 freshmen in one, 20 freshmen in another. Really, so our demographic is changing a little, and I think it has to do with just how overall enrollment is changing across the university. So I don't know if that's good, bad, or otherwise. It doesn't matter necessarily, but to the point of, getting these freshmen enrolled in our course management system and being consistent for their sake, it makes absolute sense that we're all on Canvas. So that will, for some people, that means different things than others. It's a little more challenging if you use a lot of videos, perhaps a lot of some of the bells and whistles from D2L. If you're just using D2L right now for grades and for documents, then maybe it's not really that hard of a transition at all, right? But in any case, we've got Jody, who's our resource. I was going to show you this. If you haven't already, guys, LTC has just a lot of workshops. If you go to the LTC website, just ICIT LTC, and then scroll down, you can see the Canvas workshops. And they've got a whole bunch of them. And the thing that's really cool is they've got the webinars. So if you don't want to come back to campus for summer, that's understandable, but they do have webinars on there. And I know they're going to be posting more over the summer as well. So there's some hands-on instruction in June. And so there's just a lot of them. And I'm sure they'll have more in August again and stuff too. But I would really encourage you to jump into one, and they can teach you some things to do with how to sort of clean up your existing D2L class, so when you do try to transfer it, it's a little easier and slicker. If you don't want to bother cleaning up, you want to just start from scratch and start with a new kind of a blank slate, they'll teach you how to do that. But Jody's told us many times too.
Yeah, but hang tight, because again, we are getting a template together, so that way it'll go out to the entire university, so you will at least have a starting block like we
Okay.
did for D2L.
Okay.
So just hang tight, that's in the works.
Okay, when will that be ready, do you know?
Not sure.
Okay.
Sometime, probably, obviously sometime during the summer.
Yeah, okay.
So just hang tight, we're working on it.
Okay, so that's good too. So yeah, so they've got some of these different ones. The other thing that I do think is so slick is, so with D2L, and a lot of you have experienced this, if you have a problem with D2L, we call or text or email our handy dandy little D2L folks. And they get back to us usually in a pretty timely manner, I think, and they do the best they can. Sometimes the question is such that they have to go and check with other people then. In this case, we have a direct line to Canvas people. So we don't even have to bother our people on campus. But we've got this direct line to these Canvas experts, and that's, my understanding is that's what they do, is they sit there, wait for the phone to ring. Hello.
Oh, but you can do it multiple ways.
And you can do it online
call them.
too.
When we were working on the template this morning, we had a question about one of the quizzes, so we just did the online chat. Somebody was there within 15 seconds. It was awesome. So they're answering our question, we're working on our thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's slick.
So nice. That's so nice. And I mean, clearly our campus folks are, they're up to their eyeballs, I think, in learning this stuff themselves, and they're doing the very best they can. But they've got a lot to learn too, right? So this is kind of, I always feel like I'm bothering them a little bit because they've got so much on their plate. So this way, I don't feel like I'm bothering some dude sitting in Wichita or something.
No, we're paying for it. And students have access to that too. 24 hours a day.
Oh,
7 days a
that's
week.
right. Good. That's good. Michael?
Will the quizzes transfer, like the online quiz stuff?
Yes, but the randomization thing is somehow a challenge, is from what I understand.
There's going to be some tweaking you're going to have to do, but yes, it does transfer.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
So that was pretty handy.
Yes, I mean, you're going to have to do a little work with it, and I can help you with it, or, whatever, but
Yeah.
yes, it will transfer.
Yep. The other thing, the videos will transfer over. So any of the videos that come with the textbook publisher will transfer over, because those are in Rev or VBrick, or what's that called, Jody? VBrick, Rev, something like that. So that's all transferring too. So that's good. So any other questions so far? Okay, excellent. Then the next thing I wanted to show you has to do with our COM 110 assessment that we've been working on. Now, I confess I was going to have a hard copy for you, and I don't. So I'm going to make a hard copy and stick it in your mailbox and or email this to you. But the COM 110 committee has been working for 4 semesters now. Well, we work actually after the semester's over, winter break or summer break, to do assessment. And I think I've explained this before, but just so we're all on the same page. So what we do is, and the reason we have you upload these speeches to the widget is once all of the speeches are there, so for instance right now, theoretically all the speeches are done, right? There's a computer program, Aaron Axelson has figured this out for us, where the computer randomly selects 50 speeches from any uploads that have been done and kind of dumps them in a pool. And then we go through that pool. We ended up picking just 15 speeches. And I go through and I make sure like the heads aren't chopped off, or if someone starts a speech but then it cuts out after 2 minutes or something. We go through and pick 15 completed persuasive speeches, and then we watch them, the COM 110 committee. We watch them, and we've got a simplified scale that we use to grade them, basically. And we sort of grade them on a scale of 1 to 5, right? 5 being excellent, you couldn't possibly do a better introduction, and 0 being you literally had no introduction or whatever. And so we grade them, and so we're trying to kind of compile again some assessment data. What are we doing well? And we look at this as a group. What is COM 110 doing well overall, and what can COM 110 do better? So what I have to show you is some of the results of 4 semesters worth of this data, okay? And again, I'm sorry that I don't have it for you to hold on to in your hands. But looking at some of the data here, so the first question, it's question 6 because the first question is like name of evaluator, semester of evaluation, that kind of stuff. So this one has to do with introductions, right? The higher the number, the better. So the number 5 would be perfect, right? If every introduction we watched was perfect, then we would have a perfect 100% here. But in any case, introductions, we're at a 48%. So just keep that in mind for comparison's sake, okay? Glancing down here, content development, including arguments, counterarguments, etc., 32%. Clearly not as hot. A 4, though, if you look at a 4, if we look at this as A, B, C, D, or F, a 4 is at a 48%, okay? And maybe we could even, since there's nothing wrong with the B, add these 2 numbers together just for comparison's sake. So we're at, yeah, Rhea?
Oh, sorry, I'm just adding 4 or 5 percentiles.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see.
So like an 83 compared to a 72 or something like that. So, okay. And then we come down here, quality of verbal citations and sources, including, again, making sure we have enough, and as well as the source and date. Here we're at about a 78% between those 2 scores. Looking down here, quality of language use, including descriptive words and phrases and so on. Here we're at about a 72%. 11, quality of presentation aids, professional, appropriate, and creative, etc. Here we're higher. We are at a 87.
No.
68 is what I meant to say. Yes, okay, sorry. And then we're going down here. Conclusions, okay, conclusions, we are at a 70%, right? Yep. Yeah, I'm dropping the decimals. Owning the room, including poise, confidence, etc., etc. Here, we're at about a 60%, a little over 60, okay. Quality of vocal delivery, vocal deliveries, 62% roughly, okay. And then physical delivery, and we're at about a 61%. So we can, pardon? Oh. So we can see, clearly there's areas that we're doing okay in. I don't know, we can discuss areas that, we're a little higher in. For instance, language use, perhaps we want to argue that that's, if 70% of our students are doing A or B work in this area, that perhaps, sounds pretty good. The other way we could look at this is to look at the low scores. Okay, so if we want to consider a 1 or a 2 unacceptable, how many people are in a 1 or a 2? Well, there's only 3% there, so maybe that's not too bad. This one is 4%. This one is like 11.5%, so that's getting a little higher, right? This, actually, why don't we have a... Oh, we don't have a 0, I guess. Okay, so presumably they're missing substantial, if not all, citations in this case, right? Here's a 4% for language use, 1% for presentation aids. So again, presumably someone that got a 1 means they didn't have any visual aid at all. Here we're at about a 5% for conclusion, 10% for owning the room, and again, then almost a 10% for vocal delivery, And this one's pretty high. Wow, 18% for physical delivery. So we can kind of look at it at the bad end as well, too. So the reason I want to show you this is, again, to kind of let you as COM 110 people know what we've been up to for assessment purposes. And I think that we can use this as a tool to start to think about what are some areas in our classes that we can work on. So for example, if vocal delivery is an area we want to work on, if you know, these low numbers we don't like, could we do something else in our classes to work on that? So for example, could we incorporate one extra exercise at some point before the persuasive speech so that they can work on things like their projection, their articulation, those kinds of things. Maybe they've got a lot of fillers. Maybe we could incorporate one extra thing to help bolster and get those numbers a little bit more where we want them, all right? And so these are some things, as a committee, we've talked about them, and we've been talking about how do we want to address these? Do we want to maybe take two of these learning objectives, and that's what all of these tie into, is our learning objectives. Do we want to take two of these and really for 2 semesters work hard to do a better job with those and then see what happens, see if our numbers improve, right? So maybe that's an area that we want to cover. But again, as COM 110 teachers, we wanted to kind of review those numbers with you and show you. And I will share these with you in a format that's a little easier to digest soon. So any reactions? Any thoughts as you think about some of these? And I thank you to our COM 110 committee that's here today.
Were you able to do a comparison of these results for the informative versus the persuasive to see if they got better?
We are not looking at informative speeches yet. So when we started this assessment project like 2 years ago, we said we're going to start with persuasive speeches and start this assessment process and make sure that we're happy with the process. The process still has some flaws in the sense that, so we don't, you know, all of us assess these speeches, but we don't, there's some flaws in it, we'll just put it that way. So I think that's a great point, SA, is that's something we can probably start on now, is since we've seemed to have a better handle now on persuasive speeches, we've got a little consistency with our methods, so to speak. Now we can start to incorporate the informative speeches and look at, if we go down in any of these areas, that's a problem, obviously. So that's a great indicator that we need to really work on that. So that's a really good point. Yep. So I guess my answer is that is coming. We haven't got it yet.
Okay.
No. Ria?
I know there's probably not enough data points to do this, but have you organized data to look at kind of longitudinally, see if there have been any major changes or dips semester to semester there?
Yeah, that's a good point.
We have the individual data from semester to semester. We have not done that though. That's another great question. Yeah. I don't know why it would. I don't know, but that's, yeah.
Or if there's an upward trend or a downward
Sure.
trend, you know,
Sure.
obviously it's not that many data points.
Right,
to
we've only
really
got
need
4
that.
semesters.
Sure, but
Yeah, but that's really
Yeah, I
good.
think I'm supposed to help my report out one of these days.
Oh, way to go, kids.
There's all kinds of things we can have you do, but
Yeah.
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
we'll stop.
So what I would like to do though, and what I'd love to hear from is, so I will send out this information to you guys through email, and I would love to hear from you just through an email. Like, Tammy, in my opinion, knowing that these numbers, I think we should agree as a COM 110 group to really work on verbal citations, or we should really work on vocal delivery or something like that. I would love to know what your thoughts are on that, because I think it will be most meaningful if we all put forth this sort of a consistent effort so that we can watch for it then in the assessment. If only one of us does it, well, that's great for your students, it is, but we won't be able to necessarily pick up on that through assessment then. Brian?
So I'm working through this. So I have presentations in so far all the classes that I've taught here. And without explicit instruction, the first thing that they'll do is absolutely drop an intro and conclusion. So it's interesting for me to see the high numbers on the intros and conclusions in this, probably because it's getting hammered into them on a consistent basis in the class. But and I've made it now a habit where I have a day where I basically do like crash course, a review of 110 or something like it, where I'm gonna say, this is what an introduction looks like, this is what I want from it, these are what transitions look like, you know, really giving them an explicit idea, because otherwise they just, hi, my name is, I'm talking about body, and then conclusion comes, and that's it.
Sure.
So
So
it's
that's so sad you have to do that.
It is
Right.
so sad.
And well, because I know that it probably gets so hammered in this course, right? And
Sure.
so seeing these numbers, I'm like kind of shocked, and then seeing like, you know, it looked like people were kind of interesting, a little bit more nitpicky with the delivery stuff, because of course, like it's hard to give a perfect vocal delivery. It's hard to own a room
Right.
perfectly, right? It's so easy to give a 4 instead of a 5.
Uh-huh.
But seeing the higher stuff for the content, I'm curious how we can keep hammering that in, or keep them in those habits.
Yeah.
If they're coming out with a good persuasive speech where they have a good habit, like how can we make sure that they don't just say like, oh, well, it's not a public speaking class.
Right.
So my
Right.
presentation's
Well, I'm done with
now
Com
and
110, so it
speak
doesn't
real
matter
well.
anymore.
Well,
Yep.
even having a rubric, you know, before they give their presentations, and then refer them to that rubric, saying, you are graded in each of
Right.
these areas. So taking it back to, and I think we have a Speaking Matters, or there is a general rubric, you know, that the whole university has access to. So, to me, that would be a suggestion, you know, put it in there and say, this is how you're being graded. If you need help,
But I'm glad you're here today, though, to reinforce you. These people are taught this. These people allegedly successfully covered this in Com 110, so they heard it. And I don't know if it's been so long since they took Com 110 and now they're in your class, for example, or if they think all these Com 110 teachers are, like you said, so nitpicky on this. No other teachers really care about
I
this.
think it's a mentality. It's
Yeah.
like, well, this isn't a speech class.
Sure.
So
Sure.
even though I have to give a presentation.
And
it's
when you
not-
bring up 110 in a senior level class, my common response is, it sounds vaguely familiar.
Oh, okay. Vaguely.
I get that for
Transfer
everything.
well.
No,
you
they
know,
don't transfer
especially if
well.
time's gone by.
Yeah.
Years could have gone
Right.
by and they're not really thinking,
Yeah.
you know, those terms that you
Sure, sure, yeah. All right, so we'll get out the whips and just beat it into them even more. So, okay, that's what I'm hearing you say. So, okay, good. Thank you very much. And so like I said, I will be sharing this with you electronically and then getting your feedback. So, so I thought for the last part of our class, of our workshop, what we would do is actually watch a speech and grade a speech together just for kicks. Okay. So before we get to that part, are there any other comments or questions or anything about anything we've covered? Anne?
I don't want to take it off task, so I'm looking at, so at the end of all my persuasive speeches, I ask students, okay, so what do you remember, like of all the speeches, you know, do you remember someone's in particular, and what about it made it memorable? Just from the top of your head, you know? And it seems that they always go to this, these engagement strategies. Oh, I like when they did this little quiz of us in the middle of the speech, you know, this kind of thing. And so I'm wondering where we're putting in, and this is where we can table this for some other day, but where we're putting in engagement strategies, or like, I don't know, I'm looking at my rubric, I'm looking at
Yeah.
where we're supposed to be putting this.
Some kind of like audience connection. Something.
Yeah, and like, I know that I touch on it like in one of the lessons about how you can do a couple little things, but I don't spend a lot of time on it, and maybe I should, because it seems that these are the speeches that are most memorable. And also, this is that idea behind like Poll Everywhere, or some of these other types of engagement strategies, the software, or the Kahoot, some of the ones that they're using. And so like going forward, I'm wondering where we're headed with that, or if we're going to use it. Is that under owning the room? Is it under audio or language use and audience adaptation? So that's why I was kind of like, it's not really quite with what you're just talking about, but like it is something to consider later, maybe for the committee.
Yeah, and we don't really have it. We have creates common ground, but that's not really the same as engaging them either, isn't it? So, yeah, that's a great question and a great point. I think you could argue that it involves owning the room usually, if you're confident and poised enough to quiz people, right? But yeah, I don't know the answer to that either. But I think that's interesting that you ask your students that, and that's what they report.
Well, it's just something that I'm thinking about too, like what do I need to do to make this part better? Because clearly this is something that they like, and it's more memorable, and if when they go out to the work world, I mean, they want to be effective and be memorable and with clients and so on. So, so there was that. And then I'm also looking at something else, and I don't know where this fits in the discussion, but I'm using the persuasive speech assignment description sheet.
Yes.
I think from the potluck.
Yep.
And then there's this one part that my students had an issue with this year. There's a lot of things, but like this is one. And it's this idea of 25% grade reduction from the final speech grade if there's too much information written on a note card. And I'm wondering, like, I don't
even remember that being on there, to be honest.
That's what I'm like, where is the origin of, like, I don't know. Because when Linda came in to do my evaluation, she's like, I don't know if that's, so I'm like, where's that from? And does that need to be eliminated? And I don't want to take it out if it's supposed to be in there. The students thought it was really fierce and too much to lose 25% off your entire speech grade if there's too much.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, written on a note card.
I don't remember that being on there, Michael.
In advertising, we kind of help, we try to have them wean themselves off no cards altogether.
Sure.
By
Right,
some year,
definitely.
but
Yep.
capstone stuff, they shouldn't have no cards.
Sure.
But
And I could see an individual teacher saying, you know what, I really believe this is how I'm going to grade this, but I don't remember ever talking about it as this should be a collective thing that all of us do.
That's why I need to go back in and see if it's even on some of the original ones. Or
Right.
somehow
Is there a
this we
big emphasis on only keyword note cards?
can,
Is that
for
the,
me.
yeah, okay.
yeah, it's more extemporaneous speaking than
Right.
So,
not just reading
so
the
it's,
word.
I mean, 25 sounds like a
Well,
lot,
see, they
but
said it's double
just-
jeopardy, because they said that, because you already get, like, hit if you don't make enough eye contact. So you already lose points for
Right.
that. So then you already lose points for these other factors
Yeah,
that rely.
if you're reading your speech, you're already losing those points.
Yes.
So why are you getting hit again?
Yes.
For-
Yeah, and,
Yeah,
and I
I'm glad
also
you caught that, yeah.
didn't know if people allow students to have more than one note card. Like, I only let them have one note
Oh.
card. And so I didn't know where the common ground is on that for everybody else, and if there's a requirement.
That's a good topic for discussion too. I let them use 5.
Okay.
So maybe that's too much. Maybe that's too much. Yes. The size. So very good. Well, I think what we'll do then is we'll transition to the video of the speech. We're going to say goodbye to our online watchers because the speech video and the grading of that and stuff is just a little too unwieldy. But thank you to Ash, who's filming for us today, and Jim Mead for allowing her to come on over. So thank you.